to the new WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Dr. Wanzo, your show host of Mind Matters for the next hour. We are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG _talk _radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show hosts and guests and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Again, welcome to Mind Matters, where we discuss relevant mental health issues. I'm your host, Dr. Cassandra Wanzo. I'm a psychiatrist, and I've been practicing in Atlanta for the past 30 years. Our co-host is Norman Carter Jr., who should be joining us shortly. He's a retired Philadelphia police corporal. He's written a book that's very relevant to these times. His book is entitled The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon and it's very timely. He also hosts his own show on WCEG entitled Issues and Answers. That's at Monday at 4 p.m. And as I said, he should be joining us shortly. Our topic this evening is how politics impacts our mental health. Let me repeat that again. How politics impacts our mental health. Political strife can affect our individual mental health in a variety of ways. It can damage our relationships. It can disrupt our self-care, and it can also lead to physical symptoms. With all of the social media and streaming platforms, we are bombarded with coverage of events as they unfold 24/7. There was a recent study done. Actually, they did the study in 2 years during 2 different administrations to see what the impact of political strife was on the population. And what they found is that 40% of Americans identify a significant source of stress in their lives being politics. Again, 40% of Americans identify politics as a significant source of stress in their lives. 77% of Americans in the survey reported worrying about the future of the country as a significant source of stress. 77%. They found about 5% had actually considered suicide in response to political developments. 5% had actually considered suicide in response to political developments. Young adults were among those most affected by political upheaval, especially those who already experienced higher levels of anxiety in general and who were more liberal leaning. This survey also found the following statistics on how politics impacts our mental health. More than 25% felt depressed when their candidate lost an election. 20% had lost sleep over politics. 20% reported feeling fatigued because of political news. More than 11% said politics had affected their physical health. 29% reported losing their temper over politics. 26% said they felt hateful towards those with opposing political views. 26% said they felt hateful. More than 20% had political disagreements that damaged their relationships and friendships. 1/3 reported compulsive behavior as a result of political unrest. Specifically, they found it difficult to stop consuming political information or stop thinking about politics. So what they found in an article in the American Journal, Clinical Journal of Psychology, is that politics is a chronic stressor that consistently takes a toll on our social, emotional, and physical health. And what they found, it didn't matter which party was in power. They did the survey doing 2 different administrations of 2 different parties and found it was the same. It didn't matter which party was in power. I guess I was surprised about that. So politics can harm your mental health. So some of the mental and physical symptoms that political unrest and strife or just politics can cause are fatigue, apathy, increased substance use, anger and irritability, sleep problems, chronic pain, trouble concentrating, volatile emotions, lack of motivation, depression, anxiety, feelings of helplessness, and suicide. Remember, I said 5% of people had contemplated suicide as a result of what was going on politically. What they also reported in the Journal of Clinical Psychology, that 87% of therapists have discussed politics in their sessions. I know some patients have brought it up during me, especially when Trump was running, and I just try to keep it very neutral because I think that they were trying to say certain things to precipitate a certain reaction, but I just kept it very neutral and didn't give them whatever emotional reaction they were anticipating. So how do politics activate stress and anxiety? As humans, we experience anxious thoughts to protect ourselves from threats of harm, whether immediate or in the future. We tend to look at politicians to lead our society in certain directions. When a political candidate holds opposing values, stress is inevitable. As I mentioned earlier, younger, more liberal individuals experienced more negative health effects. Let me repeat that. Younger, more liberal individuals experienced more negative health as a result of political conditions. People with higher level of political knowledge were less likely to report negative impacts. Let me repeat that. People with higher levels of political knowledge were less likely to report negative impacts. That's why you should listen to shows like Issues and Answers that Mr. Norm Carter has on Mondays to elevate yourselves, because that's protective, having higher levels of political knowledge, we find. So one of the things they mentioned was damaged relationships. So myself, during the time that Trump was running, I unfriended several Facebook friends because there was a lot of negativity going back and forth, and I just had to unfriend them because of their views and their reactions towards me. I have a patient who is now estranged from his family. He's a gay white male, and his family are all Trumpers. I mean, there were issues to begin with, but once the Trump election and they all came out as Trumpers, they completely cut him off. And so he's not able, they don't invite him to any family functions or holidays. So he's completely estranged from his family all over, political views. I was talking with my sister last night, and she was telling me about a coworker who I'll call Karen, a white female, and they were both teaching at the same school in an all-Black neighborhood. In fact, it's the grade school that I attended growing up. My sister said that Karen was always bringing up race and politics. And Karen brought it up herself always with my sister. And she had such views, like she couldn't understand why Black people were always talking about the past, slavery, Jim Crow, racial incidents, reparations. She just felt that's the past and just get over it and move on to the future. And she couldn't understand why any of that was relevant now. And my sister, she would have discussions. I guess my sister was trying to educate her and help her. She could understand why Blacks lived in the neighborhoods that they did and why they didn't just work hard and move to the suburbs where she lived. In fact, the very suburb where she lived, the first Black person that lived there was an attorney who was my father's attorney and friend. And he had to go to court to sue to live in her very suburb because they had restrictive covenants not allowing Blacks to live in that particular suburb. So he had to sue in the 60s to live in her suburb. My sister said that she's very condescending and judgmental to the Black students she teaches. And my sister just even questioned her, why are you even here at the school? That she thought she would be better served in the suburbs, but for whatever reason, she still chose to remain in this inner city school. I'm thinking maybe so she could feel better or what, but I'm just thinking of the negative impact that she's having on the mental health of those students. If she's judgmental and sees them as inferior and less, can you imagine the impact that that's having on those kids? I mean, I think that's really sad. I wish she would go teach, in a suburban school and not, there, where my sister is. But even with my sister, they were getting discussions where my sister said she would question everything my sister said. She didn't believe anything my sister said. She couldn't believe that a Black person could do the kind of things that my sister had mentioned. My sister had told her that she had received a master's from the Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. And the woman didn't believe it, had to go check it out because she didn't believe my sister. Everything my sister said, she would have to go research and see if it was true. My sister had told her she was the municipal securities principal on Wall Street, and there were only maybe 2 in the country at that time, and she didn't believe my sister about that. She didn't believe that my sister was a professor at the private college that Karen had graduated from. She didn't believe that she had traveled to over 30 countries. She didn't believe that my sister had consulted with Ukraine and Soviet Union. So when Karen finally, at some point when she kept bringing up racial issues and negative things, my sister said that was it, she had enough. And so when my sister said that, Karen ended their friendship. So yeah, it can definitely damage. I don't know if any of our audiences, if they have had any experiences that they want to share about their experiences with politics. Well, I can see there are a lot more Karens and Kens in our schools and other areas. Yes. And someone said, if she was tired of hearing it, can you imagine living it every day? But this teacher chose to remain teaching Blacks in an all-Black school. Can you imagine that? To me, that's very sad. Because when I think about it, looking back, on some of the counselors and teachers I had, if I hadn't been, so resilient and it's strong, I think it could have affected me. When I was in junior high school, the high school that was in my neighborhood, an all-Black high school, offered no foreign languages. The highest math course they offered was algebra. And so when I told my which I call my misguidance counselor, who was a white female, that I wanted to transfer to a school on the other side of town that was a top school. She said, oh, you have to get up early in the morning and take all these buses, and you don't want to do that. I said, yes, I do. So I was able to transfer, to this other school. And because of that, helped me to, to get into Northwestern and to medical school. But if I'd gone to the high school in my district, I don't know where I would be today, but there's no way I was going to allow myself to do that. So we talked about some of the ways that your mental health can be damaged by politics. Now I'm going to discuss some ways to cope with the damage and prevent the damage from dealing with a constant barrage of politics. Number one, control what you can. You can do that by getting involved in local government and politics. You can do that by volunteering for a cause that you care about. You can do that by setting up a daily schedule for yourself for self-care. And most importantly, vote, vote, vote. For those that haven't already, please vote. That's one way to exercise control over what you can. And it's really critical in this particular election. Number two, activate your strengths. What's worked well for you in the past when coping with stress? Put those strategies to work. Humor and reframing a stressful situation, those are associated with better mental health. Number three, be mindful about your input of media. Limit your exposure. That can help to reduce the mental health impact of politics. Number four, stay in the moment. That is being mindful. It means to slow down and focus on the present. Don't rush. Don't multitask. Just take your time. Take deep breaths. That can help your body and brain come back to the present moment. Do things like meditation, yoga, prayer. Number five, use it as an opportunity to reevaluate. Reconsider what matters most. Our values, our relationships, our goals. Number six, prioritize self-care. I cannot stress this enough. Exercising regularly, having healthy eating habits, and getting enough sleep. What they found is those people who sleep less than 5 hours are a much increased risk for developing chronic diseases. Number seven, process grief and loss. Like if your candidate loses, reach out to others who are feeling the same way. Find a mentor, or if need be, reach out to a mental health professional. Number eight, draw upon your support network. Our relationships and social connections are the most powerful determinants of our mental health throughout our lives. Let me say that again. Our relationships and social connections are the most powerful determinants of our mental health throughout our lives. So draw upon these connections for strength and stability. Number nine, take a vacation. That's very important. Take a vacation. So if there's any feedback from our audience or anybody else has any questions, please, let me know. Hey, if there are no other questions, this has been what I've prepared for this show, for the impact of politics on our mental health. So I thank you for joining this evening.
Dr. Wanzo, I would like to ask a couple of questions based on some of the information that you had given to us.
Mhm.
And as we were talking earlier before the show, these commercials, we have been we're just being bombarded from earlier this year, from the spring up until now, the fall, having to hear and listen to all of the rhetoric as opposed to the facts and things that and issues and platforms of the candidates. And all we're receiving is just the negative impact of that. Is this something that, if that strategy was changed to give us more information that we can work with, as opposed to just hearing the negative side of it, what are some ways that you think, I mean, I know you gave us a list of some things that we can do for ourselves, you know, in terms of how to cope and prioritizing self-care and some of the other pointers. I was trying to list those, but what do you think can be done differently with the campaigning or the advertising for this?
Politics is dirty, and we know that's not, the politics is not going to change. I mean, that's something that's been going on for years. When they had the Willie Horton ads, I mean, politics is dirty, and that's not going to change. So what we have to do is exercise to control ourselves, like turning the TV off, doing other activities that I mentioned, relaxation, yoga, being mindful, take a vacation, you know, volunteer. So those are things that we're going to have to take upon ourselves, because it's not going to change. You think that politics is going to change? It's a dirty business, and it's not going to change. So there's nothing we can do to change them. They're not going to change their tactics. They do, you know, what appeals to the base emotions of people. And you'll see like some of the things that they've done, like with Stacey Abrams, darkening the ads and things like that. They do all kinds of, you know, base things to try to appeal to whatever audience that they're trying to appeal to. So
that's the strategy that they're using to
yes,
to overload you with all of this rhetoric. But then you would think that the candidates would have the opportunity or take an opportunity to change the narrative.
Well,
I mean, you would think, because all the money that they're spending on these negative ads, you know, I see why it's so stressful, where you have people still trying to take care of their daily needs, their basic needs. But if all this money is being spent on negative advertising and campaigning, I see why a lot of people don't want to get out and vote. You know, they're sick and tired of it.
But then by voting, you're having some control, because you're exercising something you control, is your vote. So while you're seeing all this stuff, you have to realize, right, that's their tactic, and not take it personally. And maybe, like I said, not, you know, try to turn the TV off, do other things, you know, and not watch it, and then exercise your right to vote and get involved in local politics and volunteer, you know, do what you can, things that you have control over. Because unfortunately, it's going to continue.
But for the masses, though, you know, you have your volunteers, you have the people that get involved to help with the campaigning, the canvassing, the phones, banks, and what have you. But there is a question on Facebook: how do you counter social media? How do you counter that? Again, that's the only way, but that's how you know what's going on. You have to watch the television, but I guess you can limit
that's that. You can't do it 24/7. You need to limit. That's the key. Limiting the intake,
but just still just knowing the information, you know, I know that we can go and Google everything and find out what we need for our candidates and about the candidates. And you know, just as I said earlier, though, and Ms. Leslie is saying also that the ads are so negative that you don't want to even vote for anybody, because you're showing the crazy side of both parties, or the three parties that are out there. Everything is so negative. Who wants to vote for either of them?
So remember, I was saying earlier that they find that those who are the most educated about political have the least negative impact. So it sounds to me, it behooves yourself to educate yourself about each of the candidates, find out where they stand on the issues that are important to you. So you look beyond the ads, but go do research at their websites and find out where they stand, like on whatever issues, whether it's abortion, inflation, find out, where they stand. Some of the key areas where people are having, conflicts are the economy and inflation, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, immigration, guns, COVID, Trump-related issues, September 6th insurrection, election integrity, and then as you said, the political commercials. So it behooves you to go and find out where that individual, each candidate stands on each issue, especially issues that are important to you. So educate.
Right, and I hear you, but that's where I think we should hold the candidates accountable for continuing the negativity as opposed to putting out what their platform is about. They would rather sling mud, and I know it's just an old the grassroots of what they've been doing all these years, but it's time, because there's another comment saying it's so frustrating because the lies are everywhere, but you have to research and find the truth. That's correct. However, if the candidates would get on their platforms and talk about their platforms and not keep bashing the other, that's where all the frustration and that's where all of the negativity come from. If you talk about your platform, you don't have time to talk negativity. But you got to talk about what the other party is not doing. And that's what we should hold. I feel we should hold our candidates. And if they're not going to do any better in putting out their platform, then, it's still like, I guess, voting for the lesser of the two evils. But I mean, who wants to vote for either party? Really? I mean,
I can understand that frustration, but you can't allow yourself to fall into that trap and then not voting at all. You still need to vote.
Oh, right. Of course, voting, and like I said, for the lesser of the two evils, but the candidates themselves, we should hold them more accountable as opposed to bashing and negativity. Talk about some things that people can take to the polls with them, other than you having to sit there and try to decide, well, if this one did that and that one did that, who did the worst, who did most harm? As opposed to, well, okay, this candidate is going to try to correct this within our system, or going to try to improve on the problems that are in our communities, but they don't even take the time to do that. So I think it's up to us to start holding these people that are going to run for office, holding them accountable. And not letting them get away with just mudslinging. That's all that's going on.
Do you have any ideas how to do that? Because I don't.
Well, that's what I'm trying to find out from the doctor. I mean, how do
I don't know. That's beyond my expertise. So I don't know how you do that. I mean, obviously that would be ideal in the ideal world.
But I think you make a lot of money with that. But there is another comment saying we need to limit political spending, and I do agree.
Okay.
Because they raise all this money to campaign and to do commercials and ads and mailers and all this stuff, and all they do is sling mud. But is there any law? So we need to get some legislation going on about what people are actually doing to try and do better with their platforms and spending all this money. We can help homeless people. We can help children that are, like I said, lights are being turned off. And they find money to do this, to do campaigning with. Can't they find money to help people?
But you're right. I guess they figured that that's what works, appeals to people's base emotions. And, I mean, people who are uninformed, they just appeal to their base emotions. That's what the ads seem like to me. I mean, I like to watch all the debates. I've been watching and taping and trying to watch all the debates too.
They're a joke too.
Well, I mean,
you get a chance, but some want to argue, some want to still point fingers and blame the other and who they are supporting. I mean, it's just a bunch of rhetoric to me. I'm just really, and I'm up to date on the different political issues going on, but just having to hear this negativity. Repetition brings on brainwashing.
Yes,
and I think that should limit.
That's the whole purpose, is to brainwash. That's what they're guided to do. The message is to brainwash. That's what they're supposed to do.
But then if you have to brainwash people in order to vote, then that means that we don't need this particular candidate if you got to brainwash people to get out there and support you, you know. I mean, no, but I'm just saying it's just so many different things that we can use monies for our economy's sake. Our seniors, our children, our homeless, our veterans. We should be able to do a little bit better. Stop, Brainy.
Yeah, I agree. Like limitations on monies for elections. I agreed something should be done about that. So yeah, I agree with that.
We do have a comment saying that this conversation is a perfect example of how stressed we are due to politics. So thank you for bringing it to the forefront and making sure that we are aware of the impact of this negative and the politics. It's not politics.
I love that, politics.
No, that's what it is. And because I think we're all being bamboozled, you know?
Yeah.
I think they all are. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do have the candidates that I support, but I still think that we should hold those candidates even more accountable. If they want your support, I think they should do a better job. And I don't remember this type of money ever being put into politics like this. So it's a money game. Who can raise the most money? Who can have the most commercials? As opposed to them doing the job that, as one of the candidates say, if you're hired to do a job, do the job you're hired for.
Exactly. So I didn't know that there were studies about the impact. I just know how I felt. Personally, I said, I know, like watching all the ads and just getting angry and all the stuff with Herschel, and I just get angry, so furious. You know, I said, I wonder how it's affecting other people. Then I Googled and found out that there were studies that had been done, but I find myself getting angry and furious, you know, with the commercials and just everything with Herschel. That really triggers me.
Wow. But too, as we have talked about in the past, how relationships have been impacted by you for one candidate, the other one is for the other candidate. If your candidate doesn't win, there's a backlash with that and how you have to deal with the other party or the other side of things. And so it still doesn't stop after the election. And God knows, let's not go into a runoff. God knows, please don't have to do that. So I think, though, that laws need to change. We need to get onto our elected officials that make our laws and that regulate different legislation. I think we should hold them more accountable too as well.
I remember the morning when I woke up and found out Trump had won, I cried. I remember I cried when I found out Trump had won.
Because it was sad. It was a sad day for our country.
I couldn't believe it. I cried.
Yeah, but that's the things, the trouble that we've had to live with. And we see the results of that. You had reason to cry. You had reason to, because look what happened to our country.
Yes.
So yeah, but in terms of just being able to, gosh, we need to come up with a better system, even with this old outdated electoral college and all these things that are archaic. We need to trash it and start over again. And so, as you were talking earlier about the schools and how you have your Karens and Kens out there that can't believe that you have Black people that are educated and intelligent, and for them to be teaching our children, we need to get them up out of there. We should have rules about that too as well. How people try to, keep you from, they're dream killers to me. Like you even talked about your teacher, how your counselor, how they didn't want you to transfer to another school. Oh, you don't want to get up that early and go. I mean, really?
Yes. That was
you have dream killers like that. Why are we allowing them to teach our children?
Exactly. And my sister tried to encourage the lady, said maybe you would do better teaching, in the suburbs. But the teacher, she still wanted to stay there in that school. My sister couldn't understand why she wanted to remain there. Because
they're not holding her accountable for the stuff that she's doing, and she doesn't have to do better because unfortunately in our community, but I bet if she was in another environment and in another type of community outside of a non-Black community, she couldn't get away with it. The parents wouldn't tolerate it, nor would the people running the educational system. They wouldn't tolerate it either. So, and that's the thing, that we are last on the list and we don't demand better from our people. And there's a comment saying we're going backwards with book banning and fights against teaching diversity. That's
Yes,
another comment.
yes.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yes, yes. You're banning books and not allowing the truth to be taught.
And that's why I say, if you just don't want your child to read it, then don't let your child read it. But how can you ban? You know, that's a free. Oh God, we can get into a whole nother debate.
Well, you know, there's been a whole a movement towards doing more homeschooling. I was watching where they're different, like in Atlanta and Alabama, they have organizations of parents who've been together and they're doing homeschooling where they can teach their children the truth.
A lot of homeschooling is taking place, and I commend those parents that do that. They still allow their children to get a certain amount of public education, but they still make sure that they are teaching them different things. That the curriculum is still back from when the schoolhouse was first started. People still are using that type of curriculum from yesteryear. And we need to teach our children a lot more. So I think the legislation has a lot to do with that. And that comes out of electing the right people to make decisions for our families.
So that's why no matter how upset we're at over the ads or whatever, we still need to get out and vote. That's what we can do. We need to vote, not let that turn us off from voting. So we still need to vote. Even though the ads may discourage us, we still need to get out and vote.
Absolutely. And I would not, I definitely would not revoke my voter card. I'm definitely going to vote, but it's just, I think we still need to have more responsible candidates. And that's going to be coming from us demanding our candidates step their game up too. Exactly. Not just because you're a Democrat, not just because you're a Republican or an independent or a libertarian or whatever it is. I think we need to hold people that are trying to make decisions for our families and for our community. I think we should hold them more responsible. Yes. And as voters, we hold the card for that. And I think we're not doing what we can do to ensure that. But thank you so much. I was just frustrated right now. And that's the purpose. Thank you of this show today. And thank you. So can you imagine your frustration?
Yes. I'm so glad that others brought up the idea of holding them accountable. I mean, I think that's a great idea. That's something I hadn't thought of. It's just wondering like how to accomplish that. And that's great. But yeah, thinking about how do we accomplish that? That would be great.
People that we put in office, the legislators that make the laws, we should hold them more accountable. And Leslie is saying, as you said, we have to get more involved at the local and community level. Some people only vote for the presidential election. They don't think that the midterms coming up are important. But those are the people where it starts, in our own backyards, in our own homes. And there's a comment, if they do not do the job we hired them to do, then we need to fire them and hire someone else. And that's correct. Okay. That's correct. So I think with bringing things to light, bringing things to bringing attention to it, that should get us at least a start, bringing the conversation to the table. So I think it's only fair that we do what we need to do, but we should be more responsible. Yes, we should be more responsible. Right. But thank you so much. Much needed dialogue that needed to come to the forefront, but people don't want to talk about it. People talk about what's wrong, but don't want to do anything about it. Some politicians forget that they work for the citizens. That's correct. That's correct. But thank you. Okay. I tried to list most of those items that you mentioned that we can do to help ourselves with the frustration and the stress, to de-stress about the elections.
So do you have them all? Do you need me to repeat?
I didn't get them all. You were kind of going a little fast for me, and I started probably at number 4. So I think
number 1 was
2. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Hold on. And I'm going to be typing those on the live stream if you give me a moment.
Let me do that. So number 1, control what you can. And that's getting involved in local politics. It's one way. volunteering for a cause that you care about. Setting up a daily schedule for self-care and voting. Number 2 was activating your strengths. That's finding what's worked for you in the past and using those strategies. Using humor and also reframing the situation. Number 3 was being mindful about your media exposure and limiting your exposure. Number 4, staying in the moment, practicing mindfulness, doing meditation, yoga, deep breathing. Number 5, reevaluating your values, relationships, and goals. Number 6, prioritizing self-care. Number 7, processing grief and loss after an election. Like acknowledge that and realize, like me, I was grieving the loss when Trump became president. That was a real loss and grief for me. Number 8, drawing upon your support network, relationships, and social connections. Number 9 was taking a vacation, my favorite. So I want to, because some people do get suicidal, so I always want to give the suicide helpline. The new suicide helpline is 988. Again, 988. If you or anyone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts, you may call them 24 hours, 7 days a week. They said 5% of people do get suicidal as a result of what's going on. Another important thing is educating yourself about political rights, because it said the people who were the most educated about what was going on were the ones least likely to have a negative mental health impact. So educating yourself is very important. Educating yourself, voting, those are all very, very important. Oh, welcome, Mr. Norman. I don't know if you heard anything, but we went through statistics and how mental health impacts people negatively. And I went through some coping strategies. And one thing that I pointed out was that one of the most important things is people who were the most educated about political events had the least negative impacts. And that's why I said they needed to watch your show Issues and Answers, because if you are educated about political issues, you're least likely to be impacted by the mental health conflicts. So.
Absolutely, and I had plenty of statistics. I don't want to probably go and retread some of the things that you went over, but one of the things I want to say to our listeners is I had a critical thinking course at Temple University, and part of that course dealt with campaign elections, and this was years ago, but it's true today. Most of these commercials are set up to appeal to your emotions. And not necessarily your reasoning. And you're getting this drip by drip by drip by drip, day after day after day. It builds up in your system. And I've gotten to the point now where whenever there's a political commercial comes on, I turn it off. That's a good time for channel surfing for me. Because again, they're all designed to get into your emotions. And if you don't cut that loose, you do wind up getting angry and your emotions get up. And the only ones getting upset are you. The candidates aren't getting upset. the TV stations aren't getting upset because they're making tons of money off of these political commercials, tons of money. You just would have no idea the millions of dollars spent. But again, if you really analyze the commercials that are on now, they appeal to your emotions and not to your reasoning. You need to have been, the candidates should have been out there showing themselves and who they are and what they're doing long before now. Long before now. I was just amazed, and you may have covered this, but fear, hopelessness, anger, hatred, and exhaustion. Yeah. You got the Roe v. Wade thing going on. You've got the war in Ukraine going on, and people are actually getting angry. And you couple that with the fact now that in many states there is open carry laws for guns. I mean, you can't afford to be out in public getting involved in conversations about politics because you don't know who you're talking to. And you don't know what their emotional tolerance level would be. So yeah, it's a rough road, and definitely a mental health concern. I was surprised how much information there is.
Yeah, I was surprised
online. Yeah,
yes,
dealing directly with this.
Because I knew how I was feeling, so I said, I wonder if there are any studies. And then you sent me that article, and I researched some more, and I was like, wow, because I know how I was feeling.
I got one little statement I could add here, if you don't mind. This is from the Newport Institute. And it says, chronic stress, regardless of the source, taxes our resources and our resilience. Our capacity to cope constructively in response to challenging experiences and bounce back from the negative effects of stress. When our stress levels outweigh our ability to cope, we experience what is known as allostatic overload. And this can produce both mental and physical symptoms, including fatigue, apathy, languishing, increased substance use, anger and irritations, problem sleeping, chronic pain, trouble concentrating, volatile emotions, decreased motivations, depression, which we talk about a lot, anxiety, and worrying. So I'm sure that you covered a lot of those, but perhaps it bears repeating.
It does. And somewhere it mentions that 5% of people considered suicide as a result of
yes.
That's surprising.
Yes. 1 in 5, it says 1 in 5 lost sleep, 20% reported feeling fatigued because of political news, 29% reported losing their temper over politics, and more than 25% felt depressed when their candidate lost an election. And that's depressed. 5% have actually considered suicide. Yeah, that's scary because, in spite of all the nonsense that they put out in these ads, these people aren't concerned about your anger, your suicide rate. They really aren't. And the political parties don't realize that when they go out and do this, I guess what you might call emotionally captivating advertisement, that it leads to anxiety. It doesn't lead to increased knowledge or reasoning. It leads to anxiety, emotions, and we get all wrapped up, and it's just really a bad, unhealthy thing.
Exactly.
Very unhealthy thing.
So I had mentioned one of the ways is limiting our exposure, how much you watch. Otherwise, you've been bombarded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yes, we do need to limit our exposure.
And one of the things that I discovered is that this is adversely affecting children to a great degree, because they are bombarded with this stuff. And especially, I would say, your teenage and high school children are Yeah, because they get into, especially high school students, they're getting into political discourses in school and whatnot, and they're bringing into all this information they're seeing on TV. They're bringing that into the classroom, and I can see where that could lead to volatile arguments in the classroom.
In fact, they were saying, right, the people that are most affected are the younger people, especially those who with liberal leaning views are the most affected and most anxious about it.
Yeah, it's something that's very, 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 very serious. Political strife can affect individual well-being in a variety of ways. It can damage relationships.
Yes. Oh, before you came, I talked about my sister, like a Karen that she worked with, how they had to end their relationship because she was always bringing up racial, political issues, and they had to finally end their relationship. And I had a patient of mine who is estranged from his family because he's a white gay male and they're all Trumpers, and he no longer has a relationship with his family.
and that's a shame. And Donald Trump is a perfect example of one who manages not to tap your intellectual reasoning, but he taps into your emotions. And because a lot of the arguments that the people put forth who support him, they're based on emotions. And you know, when I've always say, when you have to yell and scream to make your point, which is what they do, when you have to intimidate people to make your point, that's a great example that you don't have sufficient information to support your arguments. Another one is profanity. His supporters are some of the most profane people that I've seen. And we're at the point, if you remember, last election, where they were actually threatening people from CNN, MSNBC, actually threatening their lives. And this makes no sense. It just makes no sense. Dr. Fauci, a doctor has to have bodyguards. Why? Because his views conflict with Donald Trump. Come on, folks, look at it and look at yourself and look and take a moment and step back and look in the mirror and think if what you're doing really makes sense. Really. And I'm not saying, and I'm not taking political sides here, but it's looking at the type of advertisements, the type of campaigns some of these people run, a lot of the rhetoric. And the one thing that people don't realize is separating rhetoric from reality, because some irresponsible person such as Donald Trump gets involved into a lot of rhetorical nonsense, and people take that as marching orders. And
look what happened January 6th.
Yes, exactly. And what were the people saying? We're following Trump.
Yes.
And a lot of the people that they've interviewed since then said they were all caught up in the emotion. They were caught up in once they got there, they came there for one reason. They got caught up in the mob, and their emotions took control of them, and they did things that they would not normally do. Said things that they would not normally say. I mean, this is America, and you're running around, excuse me, people are running around saying, hang Mike Pence. This is the United States of America. Why would you be talking about hanging anybody? And if you can't see the danger in that, and that emotional upheaval, that if those people had gotten their hands on Mike Pence, they would have killed him.
Yes.
No doubt.
He erected the gallows out there in the front. They had the gallows erected.
And remember, the Secret Service people, the people who tend to forget this, that were guarding Mike Pence, they were calling their homes and saying, calling their headquarters and say, call my wife or call my family and tell them I love them.
Wow.
These were people who thought that they were going to die because of this emotional upheaval. And number one, when you look back on it, it's nonsensical. And number two, it's totally unhealthy, just totally unhealthy. And people really, a lot of people really need to take a step back, look at themselves in the mirror. They need to, and right about now, we're 2 weeks away from the election day. Everybody should go out and vote. But right about now, you need to turn off the political commercials.
Exactly.
I know they're inundated with them. I have Comcast. I go right to one of those little icons, and I have a little game channel I play. And I play games for about 5 games for 5 minutes, and then I come back and watch whatever else I'm going to watch.
Exactly.
Or turn on cable, watch a movie. But yeah, the commercials right now, you just need to tune them out. When the commercials come on, okay, this is your time for your bathroom break. Get up, go to the bathroom, go to the fridge, get a snack, a healthy snack at that, and come back and watch your regular programming. But don't allow yourself to get your emotions all in a knot and get your psyche totally confused by these being just affected by all these political commercials that are coming on right now and that appeal to your emotions and not to your common reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of comments I'm reading. Someone said, I think some of Trump's followers really believe what Trump is feeding the public. And someone said, I unsubscribed to the political emails a long time ago.
Well, if we could look at history, and I love watching the History Channel. This is what happened in Germany. When the people look back on it, Hitler was an absolute nut. I mean, just as he was an evil person, just as Donald Trump is an evil person, but as evil as he was, and all the things that he did, and believe me, that Donald Trump would not be above doing those things, except for the fact that certain things keep him from doing it. But people followed him religiously. And to this very day, there are people who dedicate themselves to following the precepts that Hitler put out there. Donald Trump is no different. And the people who are blindly loyal to him are just as problematic as he is. And these are people who are not able to reason well. Sorry to say that, but anyone following that guy is somebody who really has issues. They have reality issues. As Miss Kellyanne Conway once said, they are living in an alternate world with alternate facts.
Alternate facts, yes.
Yeah, she said it. I didn't. She said it.
You see that they're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene running with him in 24. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, she years ago they would have put her in a straitjacket. They changed the mental health laws now, and these people are running amok. But yeah.
Yeah, so this has been a very needed and necessary, because I know how I was feeling, and I said I was surprised to find out there were statistics and that a lot of people were feeling that way. So the key points are to turn off the 24/7 bombardment of political information, educate yourself, get out there and vote. So those are 3 important things that you can do.
Absolutely. Voting paramount.
Mm-hmm. Any last thoughts that you have?
My thoughts, other than voting and getting out there and being an intelligent and informed voter, yes, no. If you have to go back, if you have a computer, go back and look at some of the news stories. Look at the records of some of these people who are running. Their records their behaviors are all out there for you. If you research them yourself, you don't need these commercials and the crying wives and whatnot. You don't need that.
Oh my God, yes.
Do some work for yourself.
Yes. So educate yourself. Like I said, those who educate themselves have the least negative impacts. So listen to Issues and Answers on Mondays at 4.
Absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Yeah. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your participation and have a blessed rest of the evening and week. Thank you for tuning in to Mind Matters.
Thank you.